Hi, welcome to this Sustainable Engineering short looking at water and waste management. This show will be looking at problems with water and wastewater infrastructure developments, designs for water management, soakaways, rainwater harvesting and water catchment areas, water treatment, wetlands, reed beds and peat beds, green infrastructure including green roofs and permeable paving, and then we'll pose a discussion area for you to look at in your teams. Traditionally, we have always moved water away from our buildings. We've always tried to channel it into our sewage systems, pushing it down to sewage treatment plants, away from the habitats in which we live. But this has a number of problems, and as global warming increases, it is growing and growing in its intensity. As more we push water towards our sewage treatment plant and into the sewage systems in our roads, more they are being maximised and are being overloaded outside their design capacity. So can we redesign the way we deal with our infrastructure to keep water infrastructure local to our buildings and deal with the problem at source? If not, what we will get is an increased localised flooding and damage to properties as water backs up into them. Erosion of our riverbanks as we push more water into them, overloading their natural capacity and destroying their banks. We will damage our water reserves by overflowing our reservoirs, causing them to flow water back into the rivers and moving it downstream. This itself can cause environmental hazards, as well as us dropping pollutants into our water. We can also cause a wide destruction to our services. So more we channel water onto our roads and into our drainage systems, more we're going to push water into these systems, overloading them. So how can we look at addressing it? Well, looking at how we can deal with our water on our sites within our properties with boundaries is a great way of addressing this problem. Can we reduce the level of our curbs to allow water to run back onto our grass instead of holding it within our streams? Can we hold it within our buildings infrastructure and recycling the water for use elsewhere within our toilets and sinks? Could we move it into wetlands where it can percolate and transportation can happen to release water back into the natural cycle? So let's look at some of these problems. Well, one way of addressing these problems is managing our water locally. Can we create soakaways on site to try and percolate the water away without pushing it into our drainage systems? Can we capture it in rainwater harvesting systems so it can be reused in the building? Or can we just design within our local communities water catchment areas to deal with the water before it falls back into the sewage system? So if we look at the drawings in front of us, we can see a number of different solutions on how this can be done. In the top left hand corner, there's a large crate soakaway which is being used as a overflow area for local water supply. These can be built in a way that you can actually put car parks and industrial areas on top of them. So it enables the water to filtrate below when you've got a hard standing above still in use. In the centre of the screen you can see how we can manage our rivers to overflow without it affecting our local infrastructure. If we design the infrastructure in a way that it doesn't sit in the impact zones, then we'll know that these areas can naturally flood without having to affect the buildings around them. But also within each individual building there's things we can do to reduce the amount of water supply. We can build in rainwater harvesting tanks on our sites so then that water can be filtered back into our toilets and other non-essential services to be able to recycle that water. It can be captured in our gutters and fed down into it and then connected to a soakaway for any overflow water to be dealt with. But we can also look at our wider communities and how we design them in first principles to be able to capture and slow the passage of water as it moves through our villages and towns. Be that with catchment areas within our urban living areas for surface water to run off to, sit and percolate or transport away from. Can we use green roofs or green areas to slow down the passage of water and again capture it within nature? Can we create areas along our roads where trees are planted and channel the water into these areas to allow it to be removed by transportation and also creating localised cooling? Can we put it below our car parks as you can see, with our create soakaways to be able to be managed locally? And can we combine different ways of using these systems so that when we get to our lower levels where we can put rivers and streams, that the amount of water capacity has been reduced, so we're not overflowing these natural highways of water from their natural capacity. While we're looking at different ways of addressing water, can we also treat the pollutants in it as we're moving it? Can we slow down the water movement enough that nature can be used to clean the water systems as the water passes through them? Can we use it to remove our oils and lubricants we've picked up and dropped on our roads? Can that be pushed into the local soils without over-contaminating them? Can any contaminants we have put in naturally into our water systems be dealt with before they move down into our rivers and streams? Well, there's a number of ways we can deal with this. We could use swales, wetlands, reed beds and peat beds to deal with different types of drainage. Swales can be placed down the side of roads and footpaths to deal with surface water, running them in and allowing that water to move along the side of the footpaths. It will also infiltrate into the ground. Plants can pick it up and transportate it back into the atmosphere, and it will also percolate into the soils, moving back into natural aquifers. We could move it into reed beds, where the water is pushed underneath the reed bed areas, allowing it to aerate in. The reed beds then will treat any chemicals and waste within the water, lowering its nitrate levels and allowing the cleaner waters to move into our riverbeds. We also can create wetlands using a mixture of tidal marshes, seagrasses and mangroves around our coastal areas to be able to deal with the different types of CO2 pollutant. Mangroves, though normally used in warmer climates, are a great way of securing coastal areas, stopping erosion and promoting biodiversity back into the area. But you can also use it within your local sites, things like peat beds, to be able to treat your natural waste. If you have units like septic tanks, where you are treating the first line and second line waste, which is settling within the tanks, the water that comes out of them can then be treated in a peat bed to reduce its impact on the local ground. The peat will treat it, reducing the phosphorus levels within the water to a level that can be pushed out into local streams and rivers without it polluting the local environment. We can also integrate the different types of infrastructure we have in a way that is more sustainable and it deals with better use of water. Permeable roads and roofs are a great way of capturing water and channeling it or allowing it to percolate back into the ground without it preventing us using the infrastructure in the way we wish to. Green roofs are a great way of slowing down water and actually allowing it to dissipate back into the atmosphere before it moves down into our water systems at ground level. They also provide a nicer environment when you're looking at mental health and how our environments look within our workspaces, while cleaning the airflow as well as providing a means of dealing with water runoff. Here in the diagrams on the screen you can see an example of each. In the top right hand corner is an example of a green roof. As you can see, it's built in with a small infiltration system, allowing the water to be retained locally, while with having a waterproofing layer to protect the roof system below. These type of systems also provide extra thermal mass to the building, increasing its thermal efficiency. In the bottom left hand corner, there is a permeable paved road using an eco-gristant system with aggregate within it, allowing the water to permeate into the ground below. These roads though can easily take up to 40 tonne or more depending on their design. To address our problems though, we can use a number of these systems put together. Here in an example of what we call eco machines within West Cape in South Africa. A project was implemented to try and reduce the pollutant running through the local shanty area. Using a system of tree plantations, reed beds and percolation systems to capture waste in tanks and allowing plantation to aerate it, they were able to reduce the amount of pollutant in the village. In the top right hand corner you can see an example of how the village looked before this new system was put in. Polluting water was running through with waste down the main roads, creating disease within the area. Below that you can see the same area after the project was implemented. These trees are connected with pipes below ground level, allowing the water to percolate down through the tree area and then move from site to site to site as it moves down the valley. At the bottom of the valley is a large reed-bed and treatment area which then deals with the water before it's pushed back into the natural water. These treatment areas though can be easily configured depending on the environment you're in. As you can see on the screen here, this is a number of different tanks, one after the other, all providing a slightly different use within the system. The key to these is to allow sunlight into the tanks to allow plantation to aerate the waters within them. Matter within the tanks would drop to the bottom, feeding the plants for long periods and allowed in small microclimates to build up, dealing with the waste. The water would then pass from tank to tank before being moved off into a reed bed or water system nearby. So this was a slight insight into how you can manage water and waste within our infrastructure. So what we would like you to look at within your teams and units is to discuss how these systems could be integrated into military projects. Can we create our military infrastructure to move water slowly throughout it, dealing with different problems as it's being addressed? Can we use it in a way that it actually makes our military establishments nicer places to live and more environmentally friendly? Well, we hope you've enjoyed this presentation and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.